You're worthless, Daniel. Victoria's voice sliced through LAX. Her husband carried 6 designer bags like a servant, while she destroyed him publicly. Everyone watched in horror, until a child collapsed, not breathing. In that desperate moment, he revealed a secret that shattered everything she thought she knew. Some silences, once broken, change lives forever. Daniel, for God's sake, can't you do anything right? Victoria Monroe's voice sliced through Los Angeles International Airport like a blade, sharp, cutting, designed to wound. Heads turned, conversations stopped. A maintenance worker froze mid-step. Everyone within earshot turned to witness the scene unfolding near Gate 47. Daniel Whitmore stood frozen, hands gripping an overloaded luggage cart that had tipped sideways, spilling one of Victoria's designer suitcases onto the polished floor. The Louis Vuitton bag lay there like an accusation. "I'm sorry, Vicky. The wheel got stuck and I—" "Sorry?" Victoria took 3 deliberate steps toward him, each click of her Louboutin heels punctuating her fury. She wore a crimson dress that cost more than most people's rent, diamonds catching light with every angry movement. "We're late because of your incompetence. I should have brought security to handle my luggage instead of depending on you." 2 bodyguards flanking her stood expressionless in black suits. They treated Victoria like royalty. Daniel might as well have been invisible. An elderly woman nearby whispered to her daughter, "How disgraceful." "Mom, don't get involved," her daughter replied, looking away. But it was impossible not to watch. Victoria continued without any concern for the witnesses. "Do you know how much that bag costs?" She snatched it from the floor. $12,000, and you throw it around like garbage." "I didn't throw it, Victoria." "The wheel? Always an excuse." She turned to the bodyguards. "Did you see this incompetence?" One nodded slightly. Daniel's cheeks burned with humiliation. Passengers stared openly, shocked by this elegant woman's cruelty. A young airline employee approached. "Ma'am, can I help with—" "I don't need help," Victoria snapped. "I need my husband to do the bare minimum, but even that is too much to ask." The word husband came out like something shameful. Daniel swallowed hard, rearranging bags with trembling hands. He had emotionally shut down, entering survival mode. "Vicky, the bags are secure. Can we go?" "You speak as if you're an equal, Daniel. You're here because I allow it, because I pay for it. Everything you wear, everything you eat, exists because I provide it." A businessman nearby muttered about lack of respect. Daniel pushed the cart forward, ignoring pitying looks. In line, Victoria continued. The audience seemed to fuel her arrogance. "You know what irritates me? You had potential, but you threw it away to stay home being my personal assistant, my baggage handler." "I did what I thought was best for us," he said quietly. "For us?" Her laughter was cruel. "There's me, who built an empire, and you, who became comfortable like a parasite." The word hit Daniel like a physical blow. His shoulders curved forward. This wasn't the first public humiliation, and probably wouldn't be the last. At the counter, the agent greeted them professionally. "Documents and tickets, please." Victoria tossed them onto the counter without looking at the employee. "First class. Flight to Paris. Priority boarding and VIP lounge access." "Yes, ma'am." The agent's expression changed. "There's a note in the reservation. Mr. Whitmore is registered in economy class." The silence was heavy. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, knowing what would come. "Exactly," Victoria said icily. "He flies economy. I pay first class for those who deserve it, for those who work, for those who have value." The agent blinked uncomfortably. "I understand, ma'am." "Vicky," Daniel spoke, voice low but with a hint of pain. "Is this really necessary? Necessary? You think you deserve to sit next to me? With what money? With what right? I'm your husband." "Husband!" she practically shouted. "That implies partnership, that you contribute something. But what do you do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing!" People stared directly, mouths open. A teenage girl filmed discreetly. "I took care of you," Daniel said, something different in his voice. "When you were starting out, when you had nothing, I took care of you." "Oh, here we go, the victim story. That was years ago. And what have you done since? Nothing." "Vicky, you know what's worse? You don't even have shame. Any real man would have left, gotten a job, made something of his life. But you got comfortable. You became dead weight that I drag around. Daniel didn't respond. He picked up his worn backpack and waited while the agent processed check-in in awkward silence. Done, she said finally. Gate 47 for both, but different boarding times. Let's go. I don't want to miss my spa appointment because of your slowness, Daniel. They moved away, Daniel pushing the cart like an invisible servant. Victoria made phone calls about business, millions being moved around. As they walked, a small child bumped into Daniel. He steadied the boy by the shoulders. Easy there, buddy. You could get hurt running like that. Sorry, the mother ran over. Thank you, sir. No problem. Just take it slower, okay? The brief moment of kindness transformed Daniel's face, but lasted only seconds. Daniel, stop wasting time. He sighed and continued. Passing a window, he caught his reflection and barely recognized himself. When had he become this? Victoria entered the VIP lounge, presenting her exclusive card. Daniel tried to follow, but a bodyguard blocked him. Sir, this is first class only. Your ticket is economy. But I'm with her. No exceptions. Daniel looked inside and saw Victoria laughing with a businessman. She didn't look back. Didn't check if he got in. Simply didn't care. It's fine. I'll wait out here. He sat on a hard metal bench, placed his backpack beside him, and waited. 2 hours passed. The airport pulsed with life, but Daniel remained motionless. He didn't know yet, but this would be the last day he would wait. The last day he would be invisible. The announcement echoed, Flight 447 to Paris, boarding in 30 minutes. Victoria emerged, phone to her ear, heels clicking with authority. Daniel rose, back aching, and followed at the usual distance. Walking toward the gate, Daniel noticed unusual movement near a food court. A crowd, raised voices, someone screaming for help. His body reacted before his brain processed it. Vicky, wait. She didn't turn, just kept walking. Daniel took 2 steps toward the commotion and saw a woman kneeling, holding a girl about 6 years old. The child's body was limp, lips purple, skin grayish. Someone help! My daughter isn't breathing. Around them, 15 people watched, paralyzed. No one knew what to do. Daniel felt that familiar pang, that adrenaline he hadn't felt in years. He looked ahead at Victoria, already far away. Looked at the dying child. It wasn't a choice. His legs moved. Excuse me. His voice came out firm, controlled, authoritative. Let me through. The mother looked at him terrified. Sir, she has a heart condition. Took the wrong medicine. How long has she been like this? Daniel knelt, fingers on her pulse, feeling no heartbeat. 2, maybe 3 minutes. You did right calling for help. He positioned his hands over the child's chest. Someone time this? And everyone step back. She needs air. People moved back. Someone started counting. 1, 2, 3. Daniel began chest compressions. Precise, rhythmic, calculated. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. His body remembered everything. 15, 16, 17. What's he doing? Someone whispered. CPR. But he really knows what he's doing. Victoria noticed Daniel's absence when a bodyguard mentioned it. She turned, irritated, but the scene made her hesitate. A considerable crowd, phones pointed, and Daniel in the center. What the hell is he doing? She walked back, heels clicking angrily. 28, 29, 30. Daniel performed rescue breaths, returned to compressions. Sweat ran down his face, but his concentration was absolute. Daniel! Victoria reached the edge. What are you doing? Our flight. Be quiet! The command was so forceful, Victoria stumbled backward. Never had Daniel spoken to her this way. Never. People exchanged glances. He told her to shut up, someone said with satisfaction. About time. Daniel didn't register her presence. He continued compressions, counting mentally. 1 minute 30 seconds, someone announced. The mother cried convulsively. Will she be okay? I'll do everything I can, Daniel said, and there was something in his voice, a promise, that made her breathe easier. Victoria stood frozen, not knowing what to say. She watched this man she'd reduced to a baggage carrier working with competence she'd never witnessed. 2 minutes. Then it happened. The girl coughed. Weak, almost imperceptible, but Daniel felt it. Her body contracted, chest rising. He turned her on her side as she vomited, clearing airways, and then, miracle, she began breathing on her own. The crowd erupted in applause. The mother threw herself beside her daughter, repeating, "Thank you," like a mantra. Daniel checked vital signs automatically. "You said heart condition?" "Congenital heart disease. 3 medications, but I gave the wrong one." "Not your fault. When medical arrives, tell them which medications and which you gave. They'll need that." "How did you know what to do? Are you a doctor?" The question hung in the air. Before Daniel could respond, 2 paramedics arrived with emergency equipment. "What happened?" the older one asked. "Cardiorespiratory arrest," Daniel responded automatically with medical jargon. "Child approximately 6, known heart patient, incorrect medication. CPR performed 2.5 minutes. Spontaneous breathing returned 30 seconds ago. Pulse weak but present, 55 BPM. Coloration improving." The paramedic stopped and looked at Daniel differently. "Sir, are you medical?" Daniel hesitated. "I was, a long time ago." "Well, you saved this girl's life. Another minute would have been too late." The crowd applauded again. People shook Daniel's hand, patted his back. Then a voice cut through. "You, the man who saved the girl!" A gentleman of 60 approached. Impeccable suit, commanding presence. Behind him, an elegant woman with red eyes. "That's my granddaughter. I'm Philippe Arnaud. My daughter was taking Charlotte to Paris for treatment." Daniel recognized the name. "Philippe Arnaud, owner of one of Europe's largest private hospital networks. Billionaire, philanthropist." "Mr. Arnaud, I just did what anyone trained would do." "Anyone trained?" Philippe studied him intently. "I've seen dozens of doctors. I recognize true talent. Your hands, precision, knowledge. You're not just trained. You're exceptional." People watched with reverence now. "What's your name?" "Daniel Whitmore." "Dr. Daniel Whitmore?" Philippe's eyes widened. "The cardiac surgeon who published revolutionary articles on congenital heart defects a decade ago?" Pure shock filled the silence. Daniel didn't respond. His expression said everything. "My God, you're that Daniel Whitmore. I read your studies. Revolutionary. Saved thousands of children worldwide. And then you disappeared. No one knew what happened." Victoria felt her legs weaken. Daniel? Her Daniel? That faded man was a renowned surgeon? Published revolutionary studies? But she knew. Deep down she remembered. The Daniel who woke at 4 a.m. to study. Who worked 36-hour shifts. Who spoke passionately about saving lives. The Daniel she had convinced to give it all up. "Dr. Whitmore," Felipe handed him a card. "I need to speak with you. Please call me as soon as possible." Daniel took it mechanically. Around him, photos, videos, social media posts. Within minutes, this would be everywhere. The paramedics wheeled away the stretcher. The mother turned once more. "Dr. Daniel, you saved my daughter. God bless you." She was gone, leaving Daniel in a circle of strangers who looked at him like a hero. He breathed deeply, and for the first time in years, something awakened. After so long being invisible, he had been seen. Victoria finally found her voice. "Daniel, we need to talk." He turned slowly. In that look, past an entire decade of humiliations, contempt, unrequited love. She saw it all reflected back. And for the first time in years, Victoria felt shame. The crowd still hadn't dispersed when Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. Not pain, more like ice cracking under pressure. She leaned against one of the bodyguards, but her mind was miles away, traveling through memory tunnels she had locked years ago. Daniel picked up his backpack, wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked exhausted, but there was something different about his shoulders. They weren't hunched anymore, didn't carry that weight of invisibility. "Dr. Whitmore," a journalist appeared, microphone in hand. Channel 7 News. "Can we ask questions?" Philippe Arnaud stepped forward, protective hand on Daniel's shoulder. "This young man just saved my granddaughter's life. He deserves privacy. But the public can wait. Come, doctor." They started walking, but Daniel stopped, looked back. Victoria remained in the same spot, surrounded by bodyguards, but completely alone. Her eyes, once bright with ambition, were dull, lost. For a fraction of a second, Daniel felt the familiar pull, the urge to go back, to comfort her. to be her safe harbor. But then he remembered. The bags, economy class, the word parasite. He turned and kept walking. Victoria saw it, saw the exact moment he chose not to return. And something inside her cracked like glass under too much pressure. "Mrs. Monroe," a bodyguard murmured. "Boarding is starting." "I know," she responded, but didn't move. Around her, passengers whispered. Not admiration for her clothes anymore. Judgment, disapproval. An older woman spoke loudly enough to be heard. "What a shame treating her husband that way. A doctor. A hero." Her friend agreed. Women like that don't know what they have. Only realize when they lose it. Victoria clutched her Hermes bag as if it could protect her from those words. But it couldn't. "Let's go," she told the bodyguards. Each step felt heavier. She passed the store where Daniel helped that child. Past the metal bench where he'd waited 2 hours. Each place contained a humiliation she'd inflicted. Now each returned like ghosts to haunt her. Philippe took Daniel to a private VIP room, away from cameras, small but elegant, with leather armchairs and a panoramic view of the runways. "Please sit. Water, coffee, something stronger." "Water's fine." Daniel sat, realizing how much he was shaking. Adrenaline wearing off, leaving exhaustion. Philippe ordered waters, then sat across from him. "I want to properly thank you. Charlotte is my only granddaughter. Losing her would be—" His voice failed, emotion breaking through. "I understand," Daniel said softly. "You don't need to thank me. Any doctor would have done the same. But you're not just any doctor." Philippe leaned forward. "Your articles on minimally invasive correction of congenital heart defects changed protocols worldwide, saved countless lives. Then you vanished. Why?" The question hung between them. Daniel drank slowly, buying time. How long since someone had asked about him, about his choices, dreams, life? "I got married. My wife was starting a business. It was difficult, risky. She needed support, someone to take care of everything while she built the company. And you abandoned medicine for that? I thought it was temporary." Daniel turned the glass in his hands. "Thought once her business was established, I'd return. But months turned into years. The longer I stayed away, the harder it became. I got outdated, out of touch." "Nonsense," Philippe said with conviction. "I saw you work. Your knowledge is intact. Your skills, too. You just need updating, not rebuilding." Daniel smiled without humor. "It's not that simple." "Why not? Why couldn't he just go back?" The answer was complex, tangled with years of manipulation, of undermining his confidence, of making him believe he had no value. "Your wife," Philippe said slowly, "is that woman who publicly humiliated you an hour ago?" Daniel didn't respond. The silence said everything. "Dr. Whitmore, I'll be direct. My hospital network needs a medical director for pediatric cardiology. Starting salary of $85,000 monthly, housing in Paris, complete health plan, research opportunities." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. $85,000 a month. More than he'd earned in a year before leaving medicine. Independence. Freedom. Impossible. "Mr. Arnaud, I haven't practiced in almost a decade. 6 months intensive training, fully paid, with Europe's best surgeons. Then we reevaluate." Philippe faced him directly. "But I'm honest. I'm not offering this just from gratitude. I recognize exceptional talent. And men like you shouldn't be carrying anyone's bags." The words hit like physical punches. When was the last time someone had seen him as a man with his own value? "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But don't take long. Offer stands until you board that plane. If you get on it, I'll assume you chose your current life. If you don't—" Philippe left it unfinished, but the invitation was clear. At the boarding gate, Victoria sat in the VIP first-class area, but she'd never felt so isolated. Her phone rang incessantly, partners, clients, her assistant, but she couldn't focus. She saw Daniel in her mind, not present Daniel, the Daniel from 15 years ago. The memory came unbidden, vivid. She was 23, alone in the university library on a Friday night. Most students were at parties, but she was there, surrounded by books, trying to understand alien concepts. "Excuse me," a male voice said. "You've been staring at that cardiac anatomy book for 20 minutes without turning a page." She looked up, irritated. but found a young man with glasses, messy hair, gentle smile. He held medical books, but pointed to the book she'd grabbed by mistake. "I picked up the wrong book," she admitted, blushing. "Happens when you're tired." He sat beside her. "Daniel, medicine, 6th year. Victoria, design, 2nd year." They talked until the library closed, and the next night she came back, and the next. Not to study anymore, but to find him. To hear Daniel talk about surgeries, patients, dreams of revolutionizing cardiac treatments. 3 months later, she kissed him between dusty bookshelves, and he responded as if he'd been waiting forever. Final boarding call. Passengers Victoria Monroe and Daniel Whitmore. Victoria blinked, returning to present. Tears ran down her face, smearing expensive makeup. When had she stopped seeing Daniel that way? When had he stopped being the passionate man and become just an inconvenient accessory? She knew exactly when. When her business took off. When she started frequenting circles where wives displayed successful husbands like trophies, and she had to explain hers, took care of the house. The shame she felt had transformed into resentment. And slowly, cruelly, she began punishing him for not being what she wanted. "Ma'am," the flight attendant said gently, "we need to close the door. My husband hasn't arrived. I'll check." The woman spoke into her radio, waited. "Mrs. Monroe, passenger Daniel Whitmore canceled his boarding 10 minutes ago. Only you will be traveling." The world stopped. Daniel had canceled. Daniel, who never contradicted, who was always there, had chosen not to board, had chosen not to go with her. And for the first time in years, Victoria Monroe understood what she had lost. Not a baggage carrier, not dead weight. The man who had loved passionately between library shelves. The man who had sacrificed dreams for her. The man who, even humiliated daily, had never stopped loving her. Until now. "Ma'am, are you boarding?" Victoria looked at the corridor leading to the plane, to Paris, to meetings, to the empire she'd built by stepping on the man who made it possible. Then she looked back, to the airport where Daniel was making a different choice, a choice for himself. Her hand trembled. The attendant waited. Other passengers showed impatience. Someone checked their watch with an audible sigh. Victoria stood paralyzed, one foot in the boarding corridor, the other in the terminal, divided between two worlds. "Ma'am, I really need to close the door. The word came out choked. "I'm not boarding." "Excuse me? Cancel my boarding. I'm not going." She turned abruptly, almost tripping in her heels, and started running. The bodyguards caught up, confusion on their faces. "Ma'am, is something wrong? Where did he go? Daniel, where did he go?" "We saw him enter the private VIP room with that French gentleman. Block C, room 7. Victoria took off in that direction, suitcase dragging behind. Executives moved aside, watching that elegant woman run as if fleeing a fire, or running toward one. Block C, room 7. Discreet door, dark wood with a small golden plaque. Victoria raised her hand to knock but hesitated. What would she say? How would she explain? Inside, Daniel signed documents Philippe had prepared. Employment contract, confidentiality agreement, work visa authorization. "Everything okay?" Philippe put papers in a leather folder. "I think so." Daniel stared at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Hands that carried bags yesterday. Hands that would save lives tomorrow. Doubts? Thousands. A humorless smile. "But if I wait to have no doubts, I'll never do anything." "Wise." Philippe stood, extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Dr. Whitmore. The car picks you up tomorrow at 8 for the French consulate." Daniel shook the offered hand, feeling the real weight of that gesture. Not just a job. Rebirth. Urgent knocks interrupted. 3 quick raps, then 3 more. Almost desperate. Philippe frowned, walked to the entrance, opened it. Victoria stood there, makeup smeared, breathing labored, hair disheveled. Her eyes found Daniel immediately. "You didn't board." Not a question. A statement. "No." Daniel remained seated, posture strangely relaxed. "I didn't either." I noticed. The silence carried weight of 1,000 unspoken conversations, accumulated hurts, wasted moments. Philippe cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two to talk. Dr. Whitmore, call if you need anything." He left, closing the door softly. Victoria entered slowly, as if on a minefield, set her suitcase down, stood there, not knowing where to put her hands. Finally crossed her arms. Defensive gesture. Protection mechanism. Daniel, I need to talk to you. Now, there was something different in his tone. Not anger, not hurt, just deep exhaustion. Now, she took 2 steps forward. I saw everything today. Saw who you are, who you've always been, and that Her voice failed. She breathed deeply, forced the words out. That I destroyed. His jaw tightened. The words hung between them, heavy with truth neither could deny. And in that small room, with Paris waiting across an ocean, 2 hearts that once beat in sync began the painful process of deciding if they could ever find that rhythm again. The air in the small VIP room felt thick, suffocating. Victoria stood near the door, arms still crossed protectively across her chest, while Daniel remained seated, his posture unnervingly calm for a man facing the wreckage of his marriage. You destroyed me, she repeated, the words coming out stronger this time. I destroyed you. I destroyed us. Daniel's fingers drummed once against the armrest, a brief flicker of tension before settling back into stillness. Is that what you came here to say, Victoria? That you're sorry? Yes. No, I don't know. She took another step into the room, heels clicking softly against the polished floor. I saw you down there with that child, watched everyone look at you with respect, with admiration, and I realized I was the only person in that entire airport who couldn't see what was right in front of me. You saw me, Vicky. His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it now, something sharp beneath the exhaustion. You saw me every single day. You just didn't like what you saw. The words landed like a slap. Victoria flinched, her breath catching in her throat. That's not true. Daniel finally stood, and the movement seemed to shift something in the room. He wasn't tall or imposing, but there was a weight to him now that hadn't been there before. Then tell me, Victoria, when's the last time you looked at me and saw your husband? Not your assistant, not your baggage handler. Your husband. She opened her mouth, closed it again, tried to think back through the years, searching for a moment, any moment, when she'd truly seen him. But the memories that came were all wrong. Daniel carrying her bags, Daniel waiting on that metal bench, Daniel being invisible while she shined. I can't remember, she whispered, and the admission felt like pulling out her own teeth. Neither can I. Daniel moved toward the window, putting distance between them. Outside, a plane lifted off the runway, rising into the gray California sky. You want to know something? Down there, when that little girl stopped breathing, my first thought wasn't, I can do this. It was, I can't. I'm not good enough anymore. Victoria's eyes widened. But you saved her. I saved her because I didn't have a choice. But that voice in my head? He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw real anger flashing in his eyes. That voice telling me I wasn't capable? That I'd lost everything I used to be? You put that there, Victoria. Year after year, word after word, you convinced me I was nothing. Daniel, I never meant... Yes, you did. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Maybe not at first. Maybe at first, you really believed it was temporary, that I'd go back to medicine once your business got going. But somewhere along the way, you liked having me there. Liked having someone whose entire existence revolved around making your life easier. Victoria's legs felt weak. She reached for the chair beside her, gripped its back for support. You're right. The admission seemed to surprise him. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, he looked away. I liked it, Victoria continued, forcing herself to keep going even as shame burned through her chest. I liked coming home to a clean house, dinner already made, all my problems already solved. I liked not having to think about anything except my business. And when people asked about you, her voice broke. When they asked what my husband did, and I had to say you stayed home, I was embarrassed. So I started resenting you for making me feel that way. For making you feel that way? Daniel's laugh was bitter, sharp as broken glass. Victoria, I didn't make you feel anything. You chose shame over supporting me. You chose your ego over our partnership. I know. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and unstoppable. I know, and I hate myself for it. When did I become this person? When did I turn into someone who treats the man she loves like garbage? You love me? The question came out soft, almost gentle. but there was no warmth in it. "Is that what you call this, Vicky? Love? I do love you. You have a hell of a way of showing it." Daniel moved closer now, and Victoria instinctively took a step back. Economy class. Do you have any idea how that felt? Sitting in the back of the plane while you drank champagne in first class? Having flight attendants look at me with pity? You thought it would teach me a lesson? Put me in my place?" His voice was rising now, years of swallowed hurt finally spilling over. "I'm your husband, Victoria, not your employee, not your servant, and somewhere along the way you forgot that." The force of his words seemed to echo in the small space. Victoria stood frozen, watching this man she barely recognized, this Daniel who finally had the courage to yell back. A soft knock at the door broke the tension. They both turned, and a young woman in an airport uniform peered inside hesitantly. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said, eyes darting between them nervously. "But there's a bit of a situation outside." Daniel frowned. "What kind of situation?" "The video, sir, of you saving that little girl. It's gone viral. There are reporters outside, and security is asking if you'd like an escort to—" "No," Daniel cut her off firmly. "Thank you, but no. We're fine here." The woman nodded quickly and disappeared, closing the door with a soft click. In the silence that followed, Victoria could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "You're going to be famous," she said quietly. "Again. I don't want to be famous." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from years ago, from the young medical student who used to stay up all night studying. "I just want to do my job. Help people. Use these skills I spent half my life learning, instead of letting them rot while I organize your schedule." The bitterness in those last words made Victoria wince. "I never asked you to give up medicine." "Didn't you?" Daniel's eyes met hers, and there was something devastating in that gaze. "Every time I mentioned going back, you found a reason I couldn't. The practice is too demanding right now, Daniel. I need you here for this crucial meeting. We'll talk about it next year." "I was building something." "So was I." His voice cracked on the words. "I was building a career, a reputation, a life, and I gave it all up because you asked me to, because you said you needed me. And I believed you, Vicky. I believed that love meant sacrifice. It does. No." He shook his head slowly. "Love means partnership. Love means two people building a life together, not one person giving up everything while the other takes and takes until there's nothing left." Victoria felt something break open inside her chest, something raw and aching that she'd kept locked away for years. "You're right, about all of it. I took everything you gave and demanded more. I turned you into something you were never meant to be. And I can't—" her voice broke completely. "I can't take it back. I can't give you back those years. No, you can't." The simple truth of it hung between them like a sentence. Victoria sank into the chair she'd been gripping, her legs finally giving out. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The designer dress, the expensive jewelry, the carefully constructed image, none of it could protect her from this moment. Minutes passed, or maybe just seconds. Time felt strange, elastic. When she finally looked up, Daniel was sitting across from her again, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Philippe offered me a job," he said quietly. Victoria nodded slowly. She'd guessed as much. "In Paris? Medical director. Pediatric cardiology. Good salary. 6 months of training with the best surgeons in Europe." He paused, studying her face. "I accepted." Something inside Victoria crumbled completely. "You're leaving." "I'm choosing myself. For the first time in almost 10 years, I'm choosing what I need instead of what you want. And what I want doesn't matter at all." The question came out small, broken. Daniel's expression softened slightly. "What do you want, Victoria? Really want?" "You." The word escaped before she could think better of it. "I want you back." "I want us back. There is no us anymore." He said it gently, but the words still cut like a knife. "You killed us, Vicky. Every humiliation, every casual cruelty, every time you looked through me instead of at me, you were killing what we had. And now it's gone." "It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Even if I wanted to stay, which I don't, how could I? How could I go back to being invisible in my own marriage? How could I watch you succeed while I fade away? I'll change. Victoria grabbed his hand, desperate now. I swear to you, Daniel. I'll change. I'll be better. Stop. He pulled his hand away, not unkindly but firmly. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't say you'll change because you're afraid of losing me. If you're going to change, do it for yourself. Because the woman you've become, she's not someone I recognize anymore. The truth of it hit Victoria like a physical blow. She thought of herself in the terminal earlier, screaming at him over dropped luggage. Thought of deliberately booking him in economy class just to prove a point. Thought of every small cruelty, every calculated humiliation. She didn't recognize that woman either. I don't want to be her anymore, Victoria whispered. Then don't be. Daniel stood, picked up his backpack. But don't do it for me. I'm going to Paris. I'm going to rebuild my career, my life. You need to figure out who you want to be without me there to blame for your choices. Will you? Victoria had to force the words out. Will you ever forgive me? Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his hand on the door handle. I don't know. Maybe someday. But right now, I can't even think about forgiveness. I'm too tired, Vicky. Too tired of being angry, being hurt, being invisible. He opened the door, and the sounds of the busy airport rushed in. Announcements, conversations, the hum of a world moving forward while theirs fell apart. Goodbye, Victoria. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Victoria was alone. She sat there in that small room, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt meaningless, and let herself really cry for the first time in years. Not delicate tears that wouldn't ruin her makeup. Not calculated emotion designed to get what she wanted. Real, ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside her, because she finally understood what she'd lost. Not a baggage carrier or a personal assistant. She'd lost the young medical student who'd found her crying in the library and made her laugh. The man who'd believed in her dreams even when she didn't believe in herself. The partner who'd sacrificed everything because he loved her, really loved her. And she'd repaid that love with contempt. Outside the window, another plane lifted off, going somewhere, carrying people toward new lives, new chances, new beginnings. Daniel would be on one of those planes soon, flying toward a future that didn't include her. And Victoria would have to figure out how to live with that, how to live with herself. The businesswoman who'd built an empire by stepping on the person who'd loved her most would have to learn the hardest lesson of all. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Some people, once lost, can't be found again. Sometimes, the cost of success is everything that matters. And sometimes, you don't realize that until it's far too late. 3 months later, the rain fell in a fine mist over Paris, turning the cobblestone streets into liquid mirrors that reflected the amber glow of streetlights. Daniel walked through the Latin Quarter after a 12-hour shift, hands buried in his coat pockets, breathing in the damp air that smelled of fresh bread and coffee from the bakeries still open. 3 months. It felt simultaneously like forever, and like yesterday. The Arno Hospital had become his home as much as the small apartment Philippe had arranged near the Seine. Surgeries, research, meetings with doctors from around the world. Days filled with purpose, nights filled with study. Loneliness? Yes. But loneliness he'd chosen, not loneliness imposed on him. "Dr. Whitmore!" a young voice called out. It was Amélie, a cardiology resident working under his supervision. "Leaving already?" "Shift's over, Amélie. You should head home too. Just 5 more minutes. I want to review little Lucille's test results." Daniel smiled. He recognized that dedication. It was a mirror of what he'd felt in his 20s. 5 minutes, then go rest. He continued walking, passing the bookstore he walked by every day, Shakespeare and Company, without any particular reason. Or maybe there was a reason. Memory of another library, another time, another life. Tonight, something made him stop. He pushed open the door, and the old bell tinkled softly. The smell of aged paper and unfulfilled promises wrapped around the cramped, labyrinthine space. Tourists browsed books, couples whispered in dark corners. An orange cat slept on a stack of French classics. Daniel wandered between shelves without looking for anything specific. His mind drifted, as it often did during quiet moments, back to California, back to the airport. Back to Victoria's face as he walked away. He wondered sometimes if he'd been too harsh, too final. But then he'd remember the metal bench where he'd waited for 2 hours. Remember economy class. Remember the word parasite echoing through LAX. No, he hadn't been too harsh. He'd been honest. Finally, after years of swallowing hurt, he'd been honest. "Excuse me, do you work here?" an American tourist asked, pulling him from his thoughts. "No, sorry, just browsing." The tourist moved on, and Daniel found himself in front of the poetry section. His hand reached for a volume of Neruda, Victoria's favorite, before he realized what he was doing. He pulled back as if burned, shoving his hands back into his pockets. He needed to stop doing that. Stop reaching for memories of her. Stop wondering what she was doing, if she was okay, if she'd changed at all. The only person whose change mattered was his own, and he was changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. Becoming again the man he'd been before he'd disappeared into her shadow. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Victoria stood behind the counter of a small, independent bookstore in Silver Lake, helping an elderly woman find a book for her granddaughter. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no designer labels, no flashy jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, reading glasses perched on her nose. "This one's perfect," she said, handing over a copy of a young adult novel. "My niece loved it. Couldn't put it down." She didn't have a niece. But the lie came easier than explaining that she'd read it herself during one of many sleepless nights, trying to remember what it felt like to read for pleasure instead of profit. The woman thanked her and left, the bell above the door chiming softly. The store owner, Margaret, a kind woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, emerged from the back room carrying a stack of new arrivals. "You're getting good at this," Margaret said, starting to shelve the books. "Customer just told me you recommended 3 books last week and she loved them all." Victoria felt a small glow of satisfaction. "I'm trying. How long have you been with us now?" "Almost 2 months. 2 months since she'd sold her company. 2 months since she'd walked away from the empire she'd built, distributing the profits among her longest-serving employees and investing the rest. 2 months since her entire life had collapsed at LAX. "You settling into the apartment okay?" Margaret asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Victoria lived in a modest studio above the bookstore, a far cry from her penthouse overlooking downtown LA. "It's good. Quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Quiet enough that she could hear her own thoughts, her own regrets echoing off the walls at night. But that was the point, wasn't it? The therapist she'd started seeing twice a week said she needed to sit with her discomfort, needed to stop running from herself. Stop building walls of success and luxury to avoid looking at who she'd become. "Did you want to join us for lunch?" Margaret asked. "Susan and I are trying that new Vietnamese place around the corner." The old Victoria would have made an excuse, would have been too busy, too important, too wrapped up in herself to spend time with people who couldn't advance her career. But she wasn't that Victoria anymore. Or at least, she was trying not to be. "I'd like that." Margaret smiled, warm, genuine. The kind of smile Victoria realized she hadn't received in years because she'd never given anyone reason to smile at her that way. During lunch, Victoria mostly listened. Margaret and Susan, the assistant manager, talked about their families, their weekend plans, a funny thing that happened at book club, normal conversation. The kind Victoria had forgotten existed outside of business negotiations and social climbing. "What about you, Victoria?" Susan asked, dipping a spring roll in peanut sauce. "Any plans for the weekend?" "Therapy appointment tomorrow morning." She said it without shame now, though it had taken weeks to get to that point. Then probably just reading. Maybe walk to the farmer's market. Margaret and Susan exchanged a glance, subtle, but Victoria caught it. She'd spent years reading people, learning to spot the smallest reactions. These women were worried about her. Not judging, worried. "That sounds nice," Margaret said carefully. "But if you want company for the farmer's market, I usually go around 10. "I'd like that," Victoria heard herself say, and meant it. They finished lunch and walked back to the bookstore, the afternoon sun warm on Victoria's face. As they turned the corner, she caught sight of her reflection in a shop window. For a moment, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, though she did, without the armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup, but because of something in her eyes. something that had been missing for years. She looked present, real, like a person instead of a carefully constructed image. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough to make up for what she'd done to Daniel, but it was a start. Back in Paris, Daniel's phone rang as he was preparing dinner in his small kitchen. He glanced at the screen. Philippe. Hello? Daniel, how are you? Still buried in research papers? Just finished for the day, actually. What's up? There was a pause on the other end. I have some news. Charlotte, my granddaughter, the little girl you saved, she's doing remarkably well. Her doctors in Paris are amazed at her progress. Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. That's wonderful, Philippe. Really wonderful. Her mother wants to meet you. Properly, I mean. To thank you. That's not necessary. I know. You say that every time. Philippe's voice was gentle but firm. But some people need to express gratitude, Daniel. Let them. Daniel thought about that. About how he'd spent years not allowing himself to be seen, to be acknowledged, to take up space. Okay, when? Dinner next week, my home, just family, my daughter Charlotte, my wife, nothing formal. I'd like that. They talked for a few more minutes about hospital matters before hanging up. Daniel returned to cooking, pasta with vegetables, simple and satisfying, and realized he was humming. When had he started humming again? After dinner, he sat on his small balcony despite the cold, watching the Seine flow past below. Lights from boats reflected on the dark water. Couples walked along the riverbank, hands intertwined. He thought about Victoria, not with longing anymore, but with a strange kind of sadness. Sadness for what they'd had and lost. Sadness for the years they'd wasted. Sadness for the girl in the library who'd had dreams and the woman at the airport who'd forgotten them. His phone buzzed with a text from Amélie. Little Lucille's results look good. See you tomorrow. He smiled and replied with a thumbs up. This was his life now. Surgery, research, teaching young doctors who reminded him of his own passionate younger self. It wasn't the life he'd planned all those years ago when he'd married Victoria, but it was a good life, an honest life, a life where he existed instead of just surviving. Los Angeles. Late evening Victoria sat in her studio apartment, laptop open, staring at a blank document. Her therapist had suggested journaling, writing letters she'd never send, confronting feelings she'd spent years burying. She started typing. Dear Daniel, I don't know if you think about me. I don't know if you hate me, or if you've moved on so completely that I'm just a bad memory you're trying to forget. I hope it's the latter, honestly. I hope you're happy. I hope Paris is everything you needed it to be. Her fingers paused on the keys. What else could she say? That she was sorry? She'd said that she'd changed. He'd told her to change for herself, not for him. So she wrote the truth. I'm learning who I am without my company, without my money defining me, without someone to blame for my unhappiness. It's harder than I thought it would be. Most days I want to quit, sell the bookstore apartment, go back to business, go back to being the Victoria who at least felt powerful even if she was miserable. But then I remember your face at the airport. Not angry, just tired. So tired of being invisible. And I realized that the Victoria I used to be wasn't powerful at all. She was just scared. Scared that if she stopped climbing, stopped achieving, stopped proving herself, she'd disappear. Turns out the opposite was true. The more I climbed, the more I disappeared. I became this hollow thing, dressed in expensive clothes, saying cruel words to fill the emptiness inside. You were right to leave. You were right about everything. And I'm not writing this hoping you'll come back or forgive me. I'm writing it because my therapist says I need to be honest about what I did and why. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud to admit I needed you. Too scared to acknowledge that my success meant nothing if I had no one to share it with. Too broken to recognize that love isn't about power. It's about partnership. You knew that. You always knew that. I just wish I'd figured it out before I lost you. She stopped typing, tears blurring the screen. Outside her window, Los Angeles hummed with life. Sirens, music, the constant motion of a city that never slept. Somewhere across an ocean, Daniel was probably asleep. Or maybe he was working late, saving another life, being the doctor he was always meant to be, living the life he deserved, without her. Victoria saved the document. She had dozens of these unsent letters now, and closed her laptop. She got ready for bed in her small bathroom, brushing her teeth while looking at herself in the mirror. You have to keep going, she told her reflection. Not for him. For you. The woman in the mirror looked tired, older than her years. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before at the airport. Awareness. Painful, ugly, necessary awareness of who she'd been and who she was trying to become. It wasn't redemption, not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was honest. And honesty, Victoria was learning, was the first step toward anything real. She climbed into bed, pulling the simple cotton sheets up to her chin. No silk, no luxury. Just clean and comfortable and enough. In the morning, she'd wake up and go to work at the bookstore. She'd recommend books to strangers. She'd have lunch with Margaret. She'd go to therapy and do the hard work of confronting herself. And maybe, if she kept at it long enough, she'd become someone she could recognize in the mirror. Someone worthy of the love she'd thrown away. Not for Daniel. He was gone, living his own life, and she'd finally accepted that. But for herself, because she owed herself that much, even if it was years too late. Chapter 5. Choosing Love. 6 months after Paris. The autumn rain had stopped, leaving the cobblestones of the Latin Quarter slick and shining. Daniel pushed open the door to Shakespeare and Company, the familiar tinkle of the bell announcing his arrival. He'd stopped fighting it weeks ago. This bookstore had become part of his routine, a quiet refuge after long days at the hospital. He wandered toward the poetry section, his mind still half in the operating room where he'd just spent 7 hours repairing a newborn's heart. His hands ached in that good way, the way that meant he'd done important work. That's when he saw her. Victoria stood near the French literature section, her back to him, reaching for a book on a high shelf. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. No designer clothes, no armor, just her. Daniel's heart stopped, then started again with painful force. For a moment, he considered turning around, walking out before she saw him. But his feet wouldn't move. As if sensing his presence, Victoria turned. The book slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud that made several heads turn their way. Their eyes met across 10 feet of worn wooden floorboards and 6 months of silence. Daniel. His name came out barely above a whisper. Victoria. He couldn't read his own voice. Surprise? Pain? Something else entirely? They stood frozen while the world continued around them. Tourists browsing, the orange cat stretching lazily, someone laughing at the register. Time felt strange, elastic. Victoria bent to pick up the dropped book, her hands shaking slightly. I didn't know you came here. Most evenings after work. You? She paused, seeming to gather courage. Margaret, my boss at the bookstore in L.A., she sent me to scout French publishers. There's a small book fair near Notre Dame. I leave tomorrow. You're working at a bookstore? The question came out before he could stop it. A small, sad smile touched her lips. I am. Turns out I'm pretty good at recommending books to strangers. She hesitated, then added, It makes me happy in a way the company never did. Daniel studied her face, looking for signs of the woman who'd humiliated him at LAX. But this, Victoria, was different. Softer around the edges. Present in a way she hadn't been before. That's good, he said finally. That you're happy. An awkward silence stretched between them. Other customers moved around them like water around stones. Could we? Victoria started, then stopped. Tried again. Would you want to get coffee? Just coffee. I don't expect anything. It's been 6 months, and I'd like to know how you are. Every instinct told Daniel to say no, to protect himself, to walk away before old wounds could be reopened. But something in her eyes, vulnerability maybe, or genuine hope, made him pause. There's a cafe around the corner, he heard himself say. Les Deux Magots. They sat at an outdoor table despite the chill, heaters keeping the autumn cold at bay. Victoria ordered hot chocolate. Daniel remembered she'd always preferred it to coffee. And he got an espresso. Neither touched their drinks at first, both studying the steam rising from their cups as if it held answers. You look good, Victoria said finally. Different. Settled, maybe? I am settled. Daniel wrapped his hands around the small cup. The work is incredible. I'm teaching, doing research, operating on cases I only dreamed about before. Philippe's he's been a good friend. I'm glad. And she sounded like she meant it. You deserve that. You always deserved that. And you? He made himself ask. You really sold the company? Victoria nodded, finally meeting his eyes directly. Distributed most of the profits to my senior staff, invested the rest. I live in a studio above the bookstore now. It's small. Just one room, really. But it's mine. Not a showpiece. Just home. Daniel tried to reconcile this information with the woman he'd known. The woman who'd measured her worth in square footage and designer labels. Why? Because I remembered something. Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her mug. That girl in the library 15 years ago? She didn't want an empire. She wanted to create something meaningful, to connect with people, to matter, but not in the way I ended up mattering. What changed? You left. Simple. Honest. Devastating. You walked away and I had to look at who I'd become. Really look, without you there to blame or to define myself against. And I didn't recognize her, Daniel. The woman at that airport. She was someone I'd always despised. She was my father. This was new information. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Your father? He treated my mother the way I treated you. Made her feel small so he could feel big. I spent my whole childhood hating him for it. And then I became him. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. I'm in therapy, twice a week, learning about generational patterns, about how we hurt people when we're too afraid to look at our own pain. Daniel didn't know what to say. This level of self-awareness, of genuine accountability, it was everything he'd wanted to hear 6 months ago. But hearing it now, seeing her transformation, it complicated things in ways he hadn't expected. I'm not telling you this because I want something, Victoria continued, as if reading his thoughts. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that you were right, about all of it. And because even if you never forgive me, I need you to know that I'm trying to become someone worthy of the love you gave me. Even if it's too late. Victoria, please let me finish. She took a shaky breath. I wrote you letters, dozens of them, never sent any. But writing them helped me understand what I did and why. You asked me at the airport when I stopped seeing you as my husband. The truth is, I never stopped. I just started resenting you for being everything I was afraid to be. What do you mean? You were brave enough to sacrifice your dreams for love, to put someone else first, to be vulnerable. A tear finally escaped, rolling down her cheek. And instead of admiring that, I hated you for it, because it reminded me that I wasn't capable of that kind of love, that I was too selfish, too scared, too broken. Daniel felt his chest tighten. You weren't broken, Vicky. You were ambitious. There's nothing wrong with ambition. There is when it destroys everyone in its path. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. There is when you use people as stepping stones, when you forget that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with who truly knows you. They sat in silence for a moment. A couple walked past, arms linked, laughing about something. Normal life, continuing around their conversation about broken things and second chances. I don't know what to say, Daniel admitted finally. You don't have to say anything, Victoria's voice caught. I just wanted you to know that you changed my life. Not by staying, by leaving, by finally choosing yourself. You showed me that love without respect is prison, and I'd turned our marriage into exactly that. Daniel looked at this woman across from him, familiar and foreign all at once. He thought about the last 6 months, the surgeries that reminded him who he was, the nights alone in his apartment, the moments when he'd reach for his phone to call her before remembering, the grief of losing someone who was still alive, somewhere, living a life that didn't include him. I was angry for a long time, he said quietly. So angry I couldn't see straight. Every time I remembered the airport, remembered how small you made me feel, I wanted to hate you, tried to hate you. You had every right. Let me finish. He echoed her words back to her gently. I tried to hate you, but I couldn't. Because underneath all that hurt, I remembered who you were when we first met. The girl who stayed up all night talking about changing the world.
Who kissed me between bookshelves and made me believe in something bigger than medicine or business. Victoria's breath hitched. That's the Victoria I fell in love with. And somewhere along the way she disappeared. We both disappeared, actually. I disappeared into being your support system, and you disappeared into being successful. Neither of us was really living.
Are you living now? Victoria asked, and there was something achingly hopeful in the question. I am. Daniel smiled, surprised to realize it was true. For the first time in years, I'm actually living, working, teaching, making a difference. Coming home tired but satisfied. Building a life that's mine. That's all I want for you. Is it? He studied her face. Because it seems like maybe you want something else too. Victoria bit her lip, nervous gesture he remembered from long ago. I do want something else, but I don't have the right to ask for it. Ask anyway. She looked down at her hands, gathering courage. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want a chance to prove I've changed. Not to get you back. I know that might never happen. But to show you that the work I'm doing is real. That I'm becoming someone who could be your partner instead of your prison. Daniel's throat felt tight. Victoria, I know it's too much to ask. I know I destroyed what we had. But if you could give me just time. Let me show you, not tell you. Coffee once in a while, no pressure, no expectations, just... Her voice broke completely. Just don't shut the door completely, please. The vulnerability in her voice, raw and honest and terrified, reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. This was the Victoria who'd cried in his arms about her mother's death, who'd admitted her fears about starting a business, who'd been human before she'd built walls so high she couldn't see over them anymore. 1 coffee a week, he heard himself say. Here, this cafe. We talk. We see if the people we're becoming can exist in the same space without destroying each other. Hope flared in Victoria's eyes, so bright it hurt to look at. You mean it. I mean it. But Victoria, his voice became firmer, I'm not promising anything beyond that. I'm not promising forgiveness or reconciliation. I'm just promising honesty. If this doesn't work, if I feel myself slipping back into who I was, I walk away. For good this time. I understand. She nodded quickly, wiping tears. Thank you. Thank you for even considering. Don't thank me yet. A sad smile touched his lips. We have a lot of damage to repair. It might be too much. Might be impossible. But we'll try. Daniel thought about the vows they'd made all those years ago. For better or worse. In sickness and health. They'd lived through the worst and the sickness. Maybe, just maybe, they could find their way to better and health. We'll try, he said softly. Next Thursday, 7 o'clock. Right here. I'll be here. Victoria stood, seeming afraid that if she stayed longer, he might change his mind. Daniel, one more thing. Yeah? Thank you for choosing yourself at that airport. I know it hurt. God, I know it hurt. But it was the kindest thing you could have done. For both of us. She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the Paris evening. Daniel sat alone with his cold espresso, watching the city move around him. He didn't know if this was wise. Didn't know if people really changed or if old patterns would resurface the moment things got difficult. But he knew one thing. The woman he'd just talked to wasn't the woman from LAX. She was someone trying, genuinely trying to be better. And maybe trying was enough. For now. 3 months later, Thursday evening coffee became dinner, became walks along the Seine. Slowly, carefully, like two people learning to walk after being bedridden for years, they rebuilt something new from the ruins of what they'd destroyed. They talked about everything. Her therapy, his surgeries, the books she recommended to tourists, the residents he taught. They argued sometimes, real arguments about movies and politics, and how to properly cook pasta. Healthy disagreements that ended in laughter instead of cruelty. Victoria met his colleagues from the hospital. Daniel met Margaret, who'd flown over for a publishing conference and insisted on having dinner with them. They were building a life, not the life they'd had before, but something more honest. One cold evening, walking across the Pont des Arts, Victoria stopped mid-bridge. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, concerned. "Nothing's wrong, I just..." She turned to face him, and in the lamplight, he could see tears gathering. "I need to say something." "Okay. I know we're taking this slow. I know we're not making promises. But I need you to know that these last few months, getting to know you again, watching you be the doctor you were always meant to be, it's been the best part of my life. Not because you're mine, but because you're finally yours." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. "Vicky, I'm not asking for anything," she continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know that even if this never becomes more than coffee and walks, you've already given me the greatest gift. You've shown me what it means to live authentically, to stop performing and start existing." Daniel took her hands, cold in the winter air, and held them gently. "I need to tell you something too." She waited, barely breathing. "I'm not ready to call this a marriage again. Not yet. Too much hurt, too much history. But I'm ready to call it a partnership. Two people who are learning to build something healthy, who are choosing each other every day instead of taking each other for granted." "Every day," Victoria repeated softly. "Especially the hard days. Especially when it would be easier to run or to hurt each other. We choose kindness. We choose honesty. We choose to see each other not at our worst moments, but as who we've always been underneath. Two people who met in a library and believed in something bigger than themselves." Victoria was crying openly now, but smiling through the tears. "I choose you. Every single day, I choose you. I choose you too." And saying it, Daniel realized it was true. Not the desperate, codependent choice of their old marriage, but a conscious, eyes-wide-open choice to try again. They kissed there on the bridge, and it tasted like new beginnings and second chances, and everything they'd lost and found again. Around them, Paris sparkled with lights and life. The Seine flowed beneath, constant and patient, carving its path through stone year after year after year. Persistence. That's what it took. Not perfection, just persistence. They walked home hand in hand, not to the same apartment yet, but walking in the same direction. That was enough. Because love, real love, isn't about grand gestures or passionate declarations. It's about choosing the same person every morning, even when they're difficult, even when you're difficult, especially then. It's about admitting when you're wrong and working to be better. About forgiving, slowly and carefully, because some wounds need time to heal properly. It's about looking at the person beside you and seeing not what they became in their worst moment, but who they've always been in their heart. The person you fell in love with in a library, over coffee, in 1,000 small moments that built a life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave and willing to do the hard work, you get a second chance to choose love. Not the easy kind that comes from never being hurt. The harder kind that comes from being broken and choosing to heal together. That's the love worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth choosing every single day for the rest of your life.